welcome to Energy Freedom by Energy Club, the talk show that discusses the most important topics in the energy sector. Today, we are going to talk about further steps of European countries towards the decarbonization plan and energy transition. It's about Green Deal, it's about RepowerEU. Today's discussion will focus on a range of political, economic, and technological steps needed for the transition to a more sustainable energy system. Our participants will have the opportunity to learn about the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities associated with the energy transition. It applies to those who will be watching our discussion, and the participants who will lead the discussion are real experts with a lot of experience and knowledge and skills in this field. The discussion topics today are: what are the main steps and initiatives included in the decarbonization and energy transition plan within the Green Deal and RepowerEU? What are the challenges and opportunities facing European countries in implementing these plans? What technologies and innovative approaches are being used to promote decarbonization of the energy sector? How these changes affect consumers, of course, and what are the forecasts and plans for the future in the context of further decarbonization and green energy development? If I have forgotten to mention some other topics, then of course that's because I'm just a moderator, and our participants who will deliver their presentations are real experts, so they will augment what I have said. We're not setting the exact time limit for today's discussion because one of our participants, and namely Hans-Josef Fell, the president of the Energy Watch Group and member of the German Parliament from 1998 to 2013, also the co-author of the German Renewable Energy Sources Act 2000, has a presentation which we are eager to see, and other speakers also have what to add. So with those who are watching us may ask their questions through Facebook, and those who are on Zoom with us, if there are, they will join us, may raise their hands. Virtual hands. There's such an option in the reaction subdivision and also in the chat. So now I invite to speak Hans-Josef Fell.
Thank you, Andrei Kulikov, for this invitation and the introduction. It is a great pleasure for me. I was often in Ukraine in the time before the war, and I was there to discuss with your parliamentarians and others, with governments, that the switch to 100% renewables is the decisive strategy to come to peace, to come to climate protection, and more independence of energy is the key coming to peace. So therefore, allow me that I introduce first some slides with an overview why we have to go to 100% renewables, and then I will show you political issues of that, what we have to do in Ukraine, in European Union as well, and how it is possible to go to 100% renewables. So, do you see my screen now?
Yes, we see it.
Yeah. So first is, I mentioned it already, where the oil and gas comes from is mostly the war. This is a global peace index from 2033, and we find the financing of the weapons and the financing of wars, the same picture. Islamic terrorists are mainly financed by oil and gas, and the Russian are mainly financed with their weapons by oil, gas, coal, and nuclear income for them. Therefore, when we get an independent energy security supply with 100% renewables in the countries, this cause of war will vanish. And the second question over security is, how can we get to a security society? The global heating is so tremendous fast. Last Monday, the European Environmental Agency made the last wake-up call for the European Union and the whole world to go to climate protection with renewables and others. When we do not go this way, we will see hundreds of thousands of people who will die in heat waves, in economic losses, in hunger, and plenty others. So therefore, both really strategic points lead us that we have to come to a real climate protection strategy. What we have in Europe at the moment, the Green Deal with climate neutrality by 2050, this comes too late. We have to come much earlier to this strategy with 100% renewables and with other issues in the climate strategy. Holocene project, we want to create it with universities and others. Says us, we can save and come back to a really human society within the planetary borders. And the planetary border in climate is 350 parts per million greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And we have to go down with this concentration. This means we must very fast achieve a zero emission world and lots of carbon sinking. A zero emission world is combined with a 100% renewable energy system because energy from oil, gas, and coal emits 60% of all emissions. We have to cut them with 100% renewables. But we have also come to a circular economy without emissions and waste, and then regenerative agriculture and forestry. That's also decisive for Ukraine because you have very big lands for that. It is possible to go to 100% renewables on a fast track. Until 2030 or 35, it is possible on a technology way. This is the message comes out from the main researchers who look to the system, how is 100% renewable possibility. And it will also benefit the economy of the world and will bring a lot of democratic issues and peace. And the world goes this way. We see the investment here in the last years to the energy transition. And we see the blue and the green area. This is renewable energy and electrified transport. Power grids, the light blue one. But nearly nothing plays a role nuclear in the world. There is nearly nothing compared with this, nearly nothing in CCS, in hydrogen. And this shows where the world goes to. But this is mainly driven by China, a bit by USA, not yet enough by European Union. We have to do much more aggressive to go on, alone on the view to do not lose the industry leadership to China. Because the coming industry is a clean energy industry and a clean chemistry industry, and therefore we have to go fast this way. And the way is fast because now the clean energy are economic. We see it, the most cheapest investment in new energy is solar and wind. Much more expensive is coal and gas. When you add CCS, it is much more expensive. Battery storage is still expensive, but we heard the announcement of China producers that they will cut the prices for batteries for cars by the half in 1 year. Nuclear remains very expensive, hydrogen, I believe, as well. So the main focus is on electricity from solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal, and bioenergy. And the technology growth is very fast. We had this day an announcement with realizing an off-grid system for a big research center in Germany that is fully supplied with wind power, with solar on the rooftops, with batteries, and a new grid. It is a standalone grid that brings the whole energy for the whole research center, and they need a lot of energy. Not only electricity, but also for heating and for the cars. We can go with our solar to the fields. We have so plenty places, and when we protect the fields with renewable energies, with solar, we can protect them from shadowing. We can shadow them and save the water. We can protect them from thunderstorms and have secure yields. We can go to the cities. This is a wonderful picture what I find in Kiev some years ago. One people made his electricity by itself. When the Russian cuts the power grids, he has lights in the night. And plenty could do the same. Decentralized energy is decisive. We can use the bioenergy here from oil plants, sunflower, rapeseed, and others. They are an energy storage. They can create by cogeneration electricity and heat. They can be a fuel for tractors and for lorries. They bring a protein-rich fodder, honey, oxygens, biogas plants. They can make even fertilizer. We have plenty possibilities to go with bioenergy and hydropower as well. We can create and repower a lot of existing hydropower stations and combine it with high biodiversity. This is a new power station beside an old one in Germany, and the new one brings all the fishes down and do not kill them. It is very good for ecology. Our political recommendations is come back in Europe and in Ukraine to that what make this industry revolution with renewables possible. It was a fixed-in price system, feed-in tariff, and make it up to 50 megawatt. This would be the best. We can use auctions only for utility scale projects, but not for the decentralized one until 50 megawatt. New feed-in tariff law should combine with 100% renewables, make a feed-in tariff that supports the investment, the combination investment, like this research center did. And wind power plus solar plus batteries plus hydropower or what you have in this region. You have to cut all the subsidizing for fossil and nuclear and make taxing all what is polluting in the world. Important is research and education, campaigning, and necessary is reduce all the licensing obstacles. Green Deal in European Union is on this way. We have some first steps for that to accelerate the licensing process, and we should go on this way faster. I want to show you how difficult it is when you go only with auctioning system. You will exclude decentralized investors. You have not the reducing cost what we wanted to evade with the switch to auctioning system, and we have an bordering, a limit, because more than offered is cannot be built. And the acceptance grows when the decentralized people in the villages can accept, can have access to the financing and to the projects for themselves. This brings acceptance. So my proposal is we made a big report some years ago for Ukraine to go the way like Uganda did some years ago very, very successful. Take a get fit system. This means when you get subsidizing from European Union to develop your country with renewable growth, take this money and finance your more cost in the energy system, in the grid for the consumers. Then you have the financing from abroad, and you have the best system that you can find a lot of investors and a lot of investing into renewable energies. That's from the Energy Watch Group, our advice for Ukraine and European Union to go this way. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm interested to discuss with you more about this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pfeil. And my first question is, against the background of solid data, there's such an elusive notion in your presentation as political will, which is needed for the 100% transition. I'm always baffled at this notion, especially when used by Ukrainian politicians, but now I see that experienced MPs from Germany use it as well. Could you extrapolate? Where can we glean this political will if it is absent now? And what may persuade people to finally display it?
Yeah, the political willingness is decisive because the politicians create the political framework, the laws, the subsidizing or others, and they must create it correct. But a lot of people do not know about the benefits of renewables. They believe they would be too expensive. I showed you, no, they are the cheapest one. They believe they could not bring secure energy during night and in the winter time. It is possible. We have plenty examples who do it. We can create it. They believe we cannot go with decentralized investment fast enough. We need only centralized investors. No, we have the possibilities with million decentralized investors combined with centralized investors. No questions. We need them as well. And to bring this truth to the politicians is decisive. But it is not easy because plenty of the companies of the old business, coming mostly from USA in the oil business, they create campaigns against renewables and seed the untruths. It is important to bring the truth to the people, and then you will get the political willingness. It is a hard way, I know, but it is the only way.
So when we are talking about political will, we have in mind not only politicians, but the broad circles of the electorate, as far as I understand. And it is their political will that will make politicians to react accordingly. In this respect, what are the measures that we have to introduce in order to educate people about the benefits of decarbonization and renewables?
Yeah, from a state level, you can organize education for the people. You can create plenty activities that decentralized in the towns, in the villages, everywhere will create the people themselves this. You can support them with acknowledge. You can bring them the PowerPoint presentations and the scientific reports that they can learn how to do it. You can bring them together with experienced people, what we have in Germany, what we have in Denmark, or in other European countries who were very successful. Some of them could create 100% renewable villages. They are very, very happy because they do not fear any gas price rising or oil price rising or nuclear or electricity rising. They do it by themselves. And when you learn from the experience from these people, you can make more acceptance with your people. But it must be done by a strategy from the government. to organize it and to a cooperation with the European nations.
To your mind, how resistant the governments are to lobbying from carbon fuel lobby?
The lobbying of carbon fuel lobby is very, very big. We have since 30 or 40 years, mainly in USA, the organization of research centers, of think tanks, of influencing medias and others. Most important is the Atlas network in the world. They combine 550 think tanks in the world, and they do nothing else to influence the public with fakes over renewables and climate protections. Some of this public even deny climate warming, but it is organized. And they organize it not only with these think tanks, they organize it also with corruption, with direct lobbying to the politicians. And we have it all over the world. The same picture. In some countries more, in other countries less, but it is nearly in every country the same picture. So we have to overcome this lobbyism, and then we can get the truth of the huge benefits of renewable energies.
Given the duration of the process that you mentioned and the intensity of the lobbying, how realistic you deem the thresholds of 2030 and 2050 defined by the European Union and other bodies?
Worst is a growth to 100% renewables by 2030 or 35 is on a technology and economic view, no question. When we have the possibility that we let the new technology flow, then we can see industry revolutions, what we had already. The horse riding in USA, in New York and others was completely cancelled by cars within a decade. We had the revolutions with computer technology in 1 decade all over the world, with mobile phones and others. Technologies revolutions can go very, very fast. And now we stand at the point with renewable energies that we have even the economic driver behind them. It is now cheaper to go to renewables than to go with coal, oil, gas, nuclear. And this means both we can accept. This is only the way that we create our frameworks on European level, not to subsidize in a Green Deal nuclear and natural gas, cancel also subsidizing for polluting and fossil and nuclear energy, and concentrate all the strategies to renewables. Then it can happen very, very fast. In 1 decade, we would be at the end.
Well, for the time being, I have run out of questions, but maybe there will be questions from our 2 other esteemed participants. And of course, I would not like them to limit their interventions to just questions. I'm sure that they have a lot to offer per se. My first invitation to speak goes to Mr. Torsten Waller. He is head of energy section for the support group for Ukraine at the European Commission.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. I'm based in Kiev, so I'm working at the EU delegation. And I'm following very closely all the discussions related to the new energy system of Ukraine, from energy efficiency to own energy production, power generation, synchronization with the European electricity grids, to renewables, nuclear, everything. So I'm may contribute to the discussion with some observations from the Ukrainian angle, referring to what Mr. Fell said. When I look at the discussion, and we are now in a very interesting discussion because until the end of June, the government has committed to adopt a national energy and climate plan, which has the time horizon of 2030. There are lots of working groups. They're very professional. They're very open. It's a very encouraging process compared to many other processes that I participate in. This is really including also international experts, and it tries to give exactly or answer some of the questions that Mr. Fell mentioned. What is the energy system of the future? How does it relate to the climate targets? And also, how does this link up with the developments in the European Union? Because that is part of the whole process of negotiating a future membership of Ukraine in the European Union. And we are now in a situation where I think, concerning the question of political will, the question of cost of the energy system is extremely important, because Ukraine has an energy poverty problem, which was tackled traditionally in a more or less post-Soviet way. So you try to keep energy prices down. We understand that the government over the next 4 years gradually wants to phase out what they call public service obligations, which essentially means that there's a subsidy of the electricity price or energy prices for everyone except businesses, and to move to a system where poor energy consumers, vulnerable consumers, will be better protected by payments, by subsidies, so targeted subsidies, which will then also allow real costs and real prices of technologies to appear more clearly. So that is, I think, a very important development, which hopefully will be supported also by international expertise, because for the time being, the real cost is not very clear. When you are living in Ukraine, the impression that many media and commentators give to you is the cheapest energy is nuclear. And that has a history, of course, because Ukraine has a huge park of nuclear power plants. They are all in the phase of lifetime extension, so they are essentially written off. So the cost calculation for nuclear that is presented to people is only marginal cost. So it does not take into account the cost of new nuclear reactors. It does not take into account questions of liability. So what happens if there's a problem? Who pays for that? It doesn't take into account decommissioning. In Ukraine, there are 3 nuclear reactors. And I'm not talking about Zaporizhzhia, which is a very problematic different case, occupation by Russia, and using nuclear power plants as a military object and target is, let's say, unheard of. It's the first time in human history, and it's really a very dangerous precedent. But what I'm talking about is the 3 nuclear reactors which have not operated in Chernobyl. They are standing there. They need to be decommissioned. There's no money available. There's not even a clear pathway on how this will be done. They're just standing there. They're in a, let's say, a special zone where nobody has access, and there are no plans, and there's no financial planning inside how to tackle the problem. So the nuclear sector would definitely profit from a full cost calculation, including all these factors, which currently is not available. Because the slides that you presented, which shows that nuclear is among the most expensive options, this is not common knowledge in Ukraine. And this comes to political will, where I don't think that, okay, it's clear that the operator of the power plants, Energoatom, has no interest in presenting these figures, but also from the side of the energy regulator, from the government, it is more, they care very much about short-term cost. And this is, of course, the problem. The other problem when it comes to 100% renewables that you're promoting, is the balancing of the grid. Ukraine has traditionally been united with the Russian grid, so balancing was partly done in the centralized system. Technically, most of the balancing was done by hydropower, which is fine, but also by coal-fired power plants, which technically doesn't make any sense. Even if you don't take emissions into account, just technically it's not made for that. So there needs to be some capacity for balancing the system. And currently the least cost option, because energy storage is still rather expensive, and that has been calculated by the Danish Energy Agency, which have just presented a catalog of available technologies here in Kiev, is gas peakers. And Ukraine is currently self-sufficient in gas production because consumption has gone down and production is more or less stable. It has the potential also, if it develops gas production in Ukraine, to remain more or less self-sufficient on gas. So there is a natural debate about using national resources, which includes natural gas, for balancing. So that is something which is definitely relevant, especially because Ukraine very much looks for the, let's say, least cost solutions while doing the transition. But what is very good that because of the bombing campaign against Ukraine's energy system over the last winter, especially last winter, this winter was a bit less, everybody has had blackouts. Everybody has understood that energy security is super important. And I was just this morning in an event at the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Trade. And it confirmed that businesses, municipalities, private entities, they all took measures to increase their energy security. And they all found out that it is very expensive to do this with fossil fuels. Essentially, diesel generators are super expensive. So that's not a sustainable solution. Many, many entities have these generators now, but they would like to get away from it, to go the next step. And this is where renewables comes in. So you don't need to convince Ukrainians that local renewables is a good idea, because it does not only come with, let's say, cost benefits or abstract things. It's very, very concrete. You know, you don't have blackouts. And you can even ask a taxi driver in Kiev, you know, everybody is talking about this. They know what an echo flow is and, you know, the different type of generators and solar panels. So really amazing. So the motivation is there. The drive is there. We see that local businesses and local administrations are looking into this, but the common understanding, or the picture that is delivered, is that, well, first of all, it's complicated, and of course, you know, you need a lot of organization and you need a lot of actors if you have a decentralized energy system, and that this is seen as a problem and not so much as an opportunity. Whereas in reality, it creates jobs, it increases the local value chains in the regions, etc. So people start to discuss this and start to understand this. But the big problem is that there is no transparency on the full cost of employing such technologies. And this is where you mentioned, I mean, you have a lot of studies where you get very strange information where you think, well, how did they get to these numbers? So we are in a process of engaging for the next 4 years. There is now, I think this week or next week, there will be an agreement between the government of Ukraine and the European Union about the 4-year planning until the end of 2027, linked to 50 billion support from the EU budget to Ukraine. We also have in this plan, well, it's not yet final, but I hope there will be no major changes because that would mean delays. So I hope we are all in the final stretches, that the energy pricing issue will be tackled, so that gradually the energy poverty will be tackled by addressing it directly with the people. So the people will get the money to be able to pay the bills. which is more effective and more targeted than the current system. And it also has as a specific target to promote a decentralized, more resilient, more secure energy system, which I think in Ukraine everybody agrees you need it because of the security aspect. So I think we will have very interesting and very, let's say, labor-intensive weeks and months ahead of us. And I'm very glad that the Energy Club is taking this on and bringing the experts together, because there's a lot of expertise available in different parts of Ukraine. And also there's business interest. And the big challenge will be to unite this to make it, let's say, productive, including with international partners. So, city-to-city partnerships, industrial partnerships, manufacturing value chains, all these kind of things. And just this morning at the Chamber of Commerce, there were people in the chamber who asked the Ministry of Energy, who was there, what kind of technologies in the renewable field, on heat pumps, whatever, would be offers the biggest potential for Ukrainian businesses to invest in, which is then not used only in Ukraine, but in the wider European market. And I think this is the right approach, and I found it very encouraging.
And that's it? Oh.
Well, I don't know if I think it's better if we have a discussion on
Yeah, I think that you have made a very, very thorough and forward-looking presentation. And speaking of the months ahead, I'm really happy that you will be with us in implementing those ideas. I have always appreciated Torsten Wollert's keen eye and the ability to notice some things which may go unnoticed otherwise. So thank you very much, in addition to the work that you do. And thank you also for linking Ukraine and the European Union in this respect. And I think that now it's time to give the floor to Valery Bezos, who is Vice President of the Energy Club and advisor to the Minister for Communities, Territories and Infrastructure Development. And maybe after his presentation, his speech, we will discuss some topics in more detail.
Thank you, Andrei, and thank you, dear colleagues, for your input. And I would say not much to add, especially after Mr. Wollert's report from the Ukrainian side, from the Ukrainian point of view. But I would like, first of all, to thank Mr. Fell for his input and his presentation, and maybe I'll try to underscore some points which was mentioned by Mr. Wollert. And first of all, thank you for mentioning National Energy and Climate Plan, because I believe that it's a great challenge for the Ukrainian side on how to learn, how to learn to govern the issues, the climate issues and energy issues the best possible way and the civilized way. And this way of governing by developing such instruments like National Energy Climate Plan is very important, not from the point of view of getting the resulted document. We have a lot of strategic documents. By the process of developing such a document and the way of developing and the way to communicate it with the whole stakeholders and putting together both climate and energy issues, I think it's of great importance, because we have experience of trying to physically joining the ministries, uniting the ministries of ecology and of energy, and obviously the experience is is not quite good from the point of view of the results. The need to separate them after some points of experience. But anyway, I think we still have this challenge on how to govern the issues the best way. And it starts from the civilized point of view to see the energy issues without the climate challenges. And so I believe this is a hugely important point on how to provide the right instruments for the public governance. And the second issue on how to communicate with the general public those issues, and how to generate this political will that was mentioned several times in our discussion. As for today, I see that we have kind of a political will to adopt all the rulings and all the directives, all the approaches for energy transition, for green transition. But this comes from this energy and from the urge from Ukrainian public for the Euro integration. So in a way, it comes towards European values and comes back to our politicians to provide such decisions, such political decisions in the process of Euro integrations. But of course, we are in the situation and a huge challenge of more direct communication with the governmental and the public institutions, with the general public, with such instruments and such ways of communications which were mentioned by Mr. Fell. We need to communicate the issues and the challenges of climate mitigations and the need to follow the idea of energy transitions and getting rid of fossil fuels more thoroughly with the general public. Of course, as for today, security reasoning is in the focus of general publics. But again, as Mr. Wallet mentioned, in some ways, maybe it's in a bad ways, but it helps a bit given this challenge from the Russian terrorist attacks. And now we see how the idea of having the distribution generation, electricity generation is growing in Ukraine from the point of energy security. And of course, we see that renewables and especially the local morphology for renewables are key to provide such opportunities, especially for the local communities and for the local critical infrastructure like water supply and wastewater treatment, district heating, and so on. So hopefully this energy will, again, in quite a strange way, will be transformed into the decarbonization of our energy system by such decision. And we have a huge range of opportunities in Ukraine, both in the spheres on photovoltaics and storages, and bioenergy and wind farms, and so on. Of course, there is a lot to do, still a lot to do, especially in the meaning of technical regulations and the challenges of providing our energy system stability and keeping it afloat with the flexible generation. And again, it was already mentioned by Mr. Wallert, and we've been coming to the point that we see it clearly that the traditional coal generation just is not feasible, both from the point of view of the actual economics of the process and from the point of view of the possibilities of funding such generation. So I believe we are moving in the right directions. But again, the main challenge is to keep up with the European agenda, and not just by formal needs to comply with all checklists we have in the process of the Euro integration, which is important for sure, but in the more deeper level with clear and effective communications, public government communications. Let me go. So thanks again, and moving forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bezos. And if we speak about generating political will, I wonder if it is a renewable resource or it will be exhausted after some time. So now, if you want to extrapolate on any of the topics that you have raised, and maybe Mr. Fell would react to what he has heard from Mr. Wallert and Mr. Bezos, then we have time and we have the desire to listen to you. Go ahead.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Yes, I want to underline many topics from both speakers and want to adopt one point from Thorsten Wöller. This is a point of balancing the fluctuation of renewable energies. That is very, very important. Most people believe the balancing can go only with big power lines and with big grid connections. Yes, they can help, no question. But big power lines are even in wartime insecure by attacks. And therefore, we should look more to the decentralized balancing of renewable energies. There are plenty possibilities, and we had some keywords of this. First is to make the combination with the consumers in all energy sectors, not only electricity, but also in traffic, in heating sector, in industry sector. When you create decentralized heating systems with big heat storage, you can use overflow of wind and solar in summertime with power to heat up these heat storages and take it out in wintertime. It's a wonderful combination to balance fluctuations. You can create plenty storage system. So like it did what I mentioned in this example of the research center in Germany. So the possibilities on the decentralized balancing of renewables are very, very big, and we should make more focus on it. This makes it in the end cheaper than, because big power lines are expensive, and therefore the decentralization is not only power generation, it is also balancing and also come together with all sector coupling to combine it.
Maybe a comment on this?
Yeah, sure.
Because technology is one thing, responsibility is another dimension. And we have in Ukraine, historically, a very centralized energy system. You know, big power plants, big lines, and a completely centralized management responsibility. And one of the challenges will be to follow in the management and in the responsibility the technological progress. Because I agree, you can have local balancing technical solutions, but in Ukraine, you also need to accompany it with some degree of local responsibility for balancing. And we have started to see this when they, for instance, great renewables developers like wind parks, etc., they are now getting part of the responsibility for predictability and a bit of balancing and stuff. But for the time being, it's a very centralized system. So Ukrenergo is in charge of everything. And it would be, let's say, a new process for Ukraine to somehow agree on a decentralized responsibility for balancing, to say, okay, there's a balancing zone somewhere in, I don't know, Odessa, And this decentralized balancing will be in charge of certain parameters to the national grid operator. And unfortunately, the local distribution companies who normally could do this, they have never done this. And they have not developed the capacity. And now they're in a very difficult process because some of them were owned by different oligarchs. Some of them have now been nationalized because of security risks, because they were owned by very strange people and all these kind of things. And then, of course, we have the war. But I fully agree that this is a very big opportunity for Ukraine to increase local energy security, to increase local investment and responsibility. But that is something which is really, my feeling is it's rather at the beginning of the discussion.
Thank you very much. I think that this is the time and the place to hear a comment from Valery Bezos, who has a wealth of experience of working within Ukrainian official system, as well as his expertise.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with the idea that we have such opportunities. And as far we go away from the traditional post-Soviet system, centralized, and as far we go along with different reforms which we've been providing in Ukraine, as well as decentralization reform, as well as reforms in the energy sector and market reforms in general, corporatization reforms, so on and so on. I think we'll have more and more opportunities to implement such good ideas and such approaches, maybe even avoiding a lot of traps and a lot of bad ways, having the opportunity, a possibility to involve the expertise from the very professional, from the professionals from the EU and from abroad. And I want to underscore again that this Euro integration process plays very good instrumental role in such challenges, because we have challenges on how to integrate our energy system both on physical level and both on the regulatory level, and more having these integration processes with our regulator and with the Acer, we'll have more and more opportunities to overcome those regulatory barriers and overcome this centralized culture. So hopefully we'll proceed with a good pace, having all those good news from the EU with the opening of the negotiation process, and I'm quite optimistic in this sphere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos. In thinking about future membership of Ukraine in the European Union, one of the things that we hear less and less lately is the different speeds with which European countries are moving toward their goals. Does it mean that the issue of decarbonization and renewables is basically agreed between everyone, or do some of them still insist on their own way, on going their own way and taking different speed in this, and how this may affect Ukraine? Whoever is prepared to answer, but I think that Torsten Wohlert is best equipped.
I think actually Hans-Josef Fell is more into these kind of debates, and he is also more, let's say, able to say a frank opinion on this.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, indeed, it is a big movement in the world. We see on the one side the very cheap renewable energies, and on the other side, the interest of big fossil and nuclear companies to go on with their business. One thing what they do is to create fakes, to influence with untruths the people that they do not go to renewables, because when people believe it would be expensive, they do not look to the reality. And therefore they buy more and more oil and coal. That's one strategy what big companies do. But in the last months, I see another one strategy. Big of finance funds combined with the fossil industry are now creating an option to buy more and more big renewable successful companies. This means they want to cover this business as well. First picture is, yes, it is good. Everyone must come to renewable energies to save the world, to make peace. That's clear. But when renewables go only with big finance structures, then we have a problem with acceptance in the areas. Because people do not want the big finance structures and oppose it when an investor of such a wind investment will come. When the people in the villages do the investment by themselves, combined with supporting from the European Union, with a get fit system, for example, then you have a big acceptance in the population. So therefore, we must look that we strengthen the renewable investment more to the decentralized actors, not opposing the centralized ones. They have to do it as well, but strengthen the decentralized one. This is a key that we come to acceptance and to much growth, and to include even the population for the income in the energy business, and not only make big profits with big finance structures.
Maybe to add on your question, Andrei, we see in the debates, for instance, in the European Parliament, that of course having such a major transformation is a topic that will always be debated, and we will always have different opinions. 27 EU member states, everybody is a democracy, everybody has a voice. And we see also that from time to time there are certain attacks on the decisions that have been taken. In the big picture of things, I think that the majority agrees that this transformation is for the whole of Europe, and including for Ukraine, makes a lot of sense, is necessary, not only for climate change, but also because we are net importers of fossil fuels. So we give our wealth to others who may not even share our values and our economic governance systems, etc. So giving the money to your own resources, to the people who produce it in your own countries, makes much more sense. And I think this is also very relevant for Ukraine. We have now discussed more or less solar and wind, but I would like to also underline the whole question of agriculture, of bioenergy that is linked to this. And we see it now. We are now in a very, let's say, difficult discussion how biomethane from Ukraine, produced sustainably, etc., can access the European Union's market. There are still hurdles on the Ukrainian side. There's a draft law in the parliament. There are some hurdles on the European Union side. Even inside the European Union, there are some hurdles. But it shows that there is a lot of domestic potential. It makes much more sense to remove these hurdles and to invest in our own resources, and they are by nature more renewables than anything else, than to give money to, let's say, other countries who may do with this money things that we don't even like.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And maybe Valery Bezos, by way of reacting to what he has just heard, sum up the entire discussion, unless, of course, Hans-Josef Fell or Torsten Wohlert want to add something.
Oh, Mr. Bezos.
Yes, Mr. Bezos, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so thank you, dear colleagues, for this interesting discussion. We hugely appreciate your time and your input and hopefully we'll have more and more opportunities to put more light on the issue, to provide general public and professional with more insights and more ways to look at the energy transition and green transition process, to provide general public with the more sound alternatives to the fossil fuels, both in the way of energy transitions and also job creations, economic and local communities development, and so on and so on. So thank you very much. Keep in touch, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава, and thank you really very, very much for being with us in these days of trials and tribulation. Till we meet again, bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.